G'day, this is Riley from Opal Auction Shop 53 Frogs. You know, a lot of the videos that I do for you guys are about learning how to get started cutting opal, but I'm going to put that aside today, and I'm going to do a video that is about the hardest thing that you can do as an opal cutter. This is an expert technique video because I know a lot of you guys are getting to that point in your opal cutting journey where you're looking for more, and I'm listing a bunch of this material up to the shop right now, and I'm going to try to do my best to make this video so that you can have a go at this yourself. So the hardest thing that you can do as an opal cutter, at least for me, is to take material that is seam opal from Lightning Ridge that comes from the Grawin area, and that seam opal that has a bar in it that's less than 1 millimeter thick, right? So I know you guys have seen these bars. These bars are really, really thin. For a lot of years, I've had people ask me how to cut these razor thin bars, but for an opal cutter, this is it can be a really expensive lesson to learn. It was an expensive lesson for me to learn. It's a high-risk cut because the difference between taking this stone and cutting a really high-dollar gem and having a stone that's absolutely worth nothing is razor thin. If I do one thing wrong, if I push a little bit too hard, the difference between absolute failure and a great win is less than a second. Right, and I think about those lessons that I paid a lot of money to learn in the same way that, I don't know, magicians think about their best tricks, and the reason they don't tell you those tricks, or the reason that poker players don't tell you your tells, or the reason that gold prospectors don't tell you where to dig the gold, is because when I was cutting opal for a living, knowing how to do this is the difference between making money as an opal cutter or not making money as an opal cutter. It's the difference between, you know, whether or not you can buy parcels and turn a profit on them, or whether you lose money all the time. And if you have, as an opal cutter, enough of these lessons, enough of these tools that allow you a competitive advantage when you're buying your opal, that, you know, if this opal is only worth $100 to your competitors because they don't know how to cut these bars, and it's a really high-risk endeavor for them, but for you, if it's worth $1,000 because you've taken the time and applied yourself in a way that you can cut these, learn how to cut these, then these kinds of stones are going to be more valuable to you than they are to anybody else. And so, as a commercial opal cutter, it was really important for me to not tell anybody how to do what I'm going to tell you how to do today. But as kind of my life is going in a way where I'm, you know, supplying you guys with this material, it's important for me now to share this information with you guys so that you know how to cut these stones, and you can take these stones and turn them from, you know, cheap stones that nobody knows what to do with to really expensive gems. The bar on this particular stone that I've picked out for this demonstration is 0.2 millimeters thick, right? So you could get 5 of these bars in a single millimeter, and most opal cutters would have a hard time cutting a millimeter bar, right? So this is really, really tricky business, and if you want to have a go with this, I'm going to highly suggest that you pick up a set of digital calipers. You can do it without these, but if you have a set of digital calipers, it's going to make this job a lot easier. I need you to get a piece of potch, something with no color in it, because there's something that I can't tell you, and it's going to be different for everybody. And the thing that I want you to figure out is how long it takes you, given your wheels or your setup or your machinery, and how heavy you are in the way that you push your opal towards your machine. You need to figure out how much material is taken off between your roughest wheel and your final polish, because whenever you're cutting razor thin bars, that distance is a critical thing to know, because you're going to stop that distance above the bar, right? So let's, this is a piece of potch that I've picked up for us to start out with. I'm going to do this so that even me, I don't even know that number for myself all the time because it changes, right? Because my wheels will wear down, or if I have stopped cutting for a couple of weeks, and I start cutting again, I might use a little bit more or a little bit less pressure. It's really important to know that number. So I'm going to do that right now with you guys. I'm going to take this piece of potch and I'm going to polish it up. I'm going to measure it, and then I'm going to measure it again when I'm done, to figure out what that number is for me, and I'm going to use that number when I'm cutting this piece of seam opal. All right, so the first part, I've taken that piece of potch and made it into a nice little cylinder here. And now that it's into kind of a rough cylinder shape, like the shape that I want, I'm going to use my calipers to make it into as close to exactly flat, or the same distance on all four sides as I possibly can. So right now, just straight off the machine, roughing it with my eye, I've got, what, 9.68, 9.60, 9.46, and 9.41. This looks perfectly flat, but the difference right now is 0.2 millimeters, which is the thickness of the bar of the opal that I'm trying to cut. So that's way too thick for my purposes now. The first thing I do is I draw a little cross on here. And then I measure each of the points on the cross. So that's 9.6. I'll draw a little 0.6 on there. The second one is 9.66. So this is a little high here. Third one there is 0.45. So this is the lowest end. I don't want to take anything off of this end. And this one is 0.44. So I don't want to take anything off of this end either. All right. So this is my 0.45 and 0.44. This is 0.6 and 0.65, right? So the highest part is here and the lowest part is here. So what I need to do is take it on my lap and take this side down just a little bit. One of the reasons this technique is not a beginner's technique, or maybe not even an intermediate technique, is you have to know your wheels really well. You have to know how fast they cut, and if they cut faster or slower on different parts of the wheels or laps. I haven't used this lap in a while, so I don't know if what I've done there is enough. Okay, so that's 0.45, 0.45, 0.39, 0.34, 0.40, 0.45. So I know that right here is a little bit thick still, just by a bit. So I kiss it there just a bit. Back onto the calipers. It's 0.41, 0.35, 0.36, 0.35, 0.43, so a little bit more right there, and then I'm done. Right. I'm going to measure again. Most digital calipers will have a 0 on them, so make sure that there's nothing in between the jaws. Close them. 0 them out if they're not saying 0, 0, 0. Okay, I think I'm pretty close now. Okay. Now, whenever you measure it, make sure if you're on the saw, you can kind of rough measure it, but whenever you're measuring for accuracy, make sure that you're biting just the tip of the opal right there. So that's says 0.33, 0.27, 0.29, 0.33. So that's a difference of 6 thousandths. All right, for our purposes right now, a difference of 6 thousandths is going to be okay. So we're not talking about cutting in the thousandths. We're talking about, you know, tenths of a millimeter. All right, so now that I have this, I need to write down my overall thickness is the first measurement I need. My overall thickness is going to be, I got 4.3, 4.3, 4.3, 4.3. All right, so my overall measurement is a starting point is 4.36. Now I need to cut this opal and figure out what the opal is after I cut it. And that number will tell me how much material is removed through the cutting process using my wheels exactly the way that I use them. One of the other reasons this process is really kind of an expert process is as you cut more and more opal, you will find that you develop a pattern where you consistently cut the same time on every wheel. So it might be depending on how new your wheels are or how old they are. You know, my wheels are, you know, maybe 30 seconds or 35-second wheels right now, meaning I stay on each one of those wheels for 30 to 45 seconds. And if you do that consistently, then you'll know that whenever you're cutting the opal that has the thin bar in it, that you're going to take away that same, roughly that same amount of material. All right, so I'm going to dock this up now and cut it. Pull that over. It started out wet, and so I know that it's the right temperature right about the time all of the water really important in this part particularly that you get a very flat spin. When I spin it, I'm looking at, because the top and the bottom are very even right now, it doesn't really matter, but whenever I spin it, I'm looking at that bottom edge. I want to make sure as I spin it, it doesn't wobble up and down. It spins really flat. Now as I get started, I need to measure the amount of material that's taken off from my roughest wheel to my polish. I started off on my flat lap, which is about an 80 grit. So on my wheels here, I'm going to measure from my 100 grit all the way up to my 3000 and then polish it. This is my 230. This is my 280. Going to the 600. a close-up of this stone, we can see that I've taken it through my steps as fast as I can while leaving it on each wheel long enough to make sure that I get a perfect polish. Now the next step is to take it off of the stop and measure what the polished stone measures now. Okay, it's very important to make sure that you take your razor and get all of the wax off of the stone, because you don't want it giving you a different measurement when you put it on the calipers again. Alright, so it was 4.36 before I polished it. Now, whenever you go measure it again, you need to pull back, make sure that you're tared in or zeroed in at 0 millimeters. And the new measurement is 3.77, 3.6, 3.6, 3.6, 3.6. All right, so it's 3.6 all the way around. Yeah, 3.66. So today, for me, given my wheels and the mood I'm in and how I feel about things and the way the wind's blowing, my wheels are cutting 0.7. So the whole process for me, going from my roughest wheel to my final polish, is taking away 0.7 millimeters of opal. And what that tells me is that when I get this stone to the point where I want to start cutting it, I need to leave about 0.7 millimeters of potch directly above the bar, because the polishing process is going to work through that potch. If you take it down, most people will take it down to the bar and start the polishing process, and because the bar is only 0.2 millimeters, if you cut 0.7 millimeters out in the polishing, halfway through the polishing process, your bar is gone. By the time you're finished with your polishing process, your bar is completely gone and forgotten by everybody. So the next process that I need to do is to get this stone ready to cut so that I can see the bar absolutely perfectly clear all the way around the stone and have 0.7 millimeters of potch directly above that bar before I start my cut. I don't know if you can see this really clearly, but this bar, I can see clearly here, I can see clearly here, and then it just taps out here. Right? So what I'm going to need to do is bring it in here so that I can see that bar really clearly all the way around the stone. There's also, with a lot of this material, there's also the issue of how to orient it. If it looks like the potch is the same color above and below the bar, it usually makes sense to orient it in a way that the thicker part is below the bar. And so this makes this light part the top of the bar, and the bottom, the dark potch here is going to be the bottom of the stone. All right, it's time to go clean it up. So I not only need to clean it up so that I can see the bar all the way around the opal, but it's going at a slant here, so I'm going to have to true it up as well, which means I'm going to have to bring the sides perpendicular to the bar so that I can get a clear measurement all the way around the top of the bar. This is just on my 100 wheel. Got no color here, so I just need to bring this side in a bit. Always check. Cost you nothing to check. Cost you heaps to eat for color. This bar has to be absolutely 100% clear. If it's murky or you can't see it very clearly, this process is not going to work. Alright, so once it starts to clear up, I put the bar perpendicular to the wheel and start spinning it around to true up the opal. Now that I have the bar visible, I'm going to try to make the bottom the same distance from the bar all the way around. Now that the bottom is the same thickness all the way around, I need to start taking the top that is the same thickness above the bar. this next part is kind of tricky, and it's because it's really hard to get an accurate line on an opal. So my margin, my cutting depth from raw to polish is 0.7 millimeters. I don't want to be exactly 0.7 millimeters because that's going to be right at the very top of the bar, and a lot of times at the very top of the bar it's going to be milky. I want to be, you know, just into the bar. So I'm going to use 0.6 millimeters as my target, right? And so if you get your calipers and you set them on 0.6 millimeters, there, 0.58, 0.6. There's a little screw on top. Once you get it there, you can screw it tight and it will stay where you need it. All right, so what you're going to be looking for is this gap here. That gap is the gap that you want to leave over the top of your bar. So you measure from the top of the bar, not the bottom of the bar, the top of the bar, and you want to start your cut at that 0.6 millimeter line. It looks like I've got maybe twice that right now. One of the most important tools that you can have is an opal cutter is a really good fine-tipped mechanical pencil. They're really good to draw on opals. It's really good to be accurate. The finer the tip that you can get, the better. This process, it really helps if your opal's wet. I think I'm using 0.4 millimeter lead. All right, so with this part, it's really good to do this under magnification. So if you have a light with a magnifier built in, that's good. If you don't, you can use like a flashlight and like one of the headlamps or a loupe. Unless your eyes are just extremely sharp, it's really good to do this part under magnification. Okay, so this is probably the hardest part of this whole process. I have locked into my digital calipers the 0.6 that I need. So it's 0.64, it's 6 thousandths off of where I want to be, which is fine. Now, if you've left a lot of meat above the bar, if you have a lot of meat above the bar, you can try with a very fine pencil to draw it on there. But normally what I try to do is I just get that measurement kind of locked in my head and see what it looks like. And you want to measure not from the bottom of the bar, but from the top of the bar. And you're going to work your way around the stone on your finest hard wheel and bring the potch above the bar down to that measurement. All right, so I look like I'm about twice what I need. If you find someplace that you're exactly where you need to be, you can use that as a reference. Okay, so there's a natural divot on this side of the stone that's bringing it down to, I don't know, about maybe 0.7 above the bar. And I'm going to use that as a reference and try to make the distance, the thickness of the potch above the bar, this thickness all the way around. So it says 0 there, but it's still locked in at that 0.6 millimeters. And that is exactly the measurement that I'm getting from the top of the bar to the top of the stone now. 0.6, 0.6, 0.6, 0.6. Okay, so I get 0.6 all the way around. And I know that my cutting depth starting from my 100 grit wheel is 0.7. So as I dop this and I cut down now, I should hit the very top of that bar when I'm finishing my polish. So fingers crossed, instead of a worthless stone, we get something that is worth the effort. If you have some wonky dops, this is not the time to use them. No, this one's fine, it's just the wax. Okay, so the stone was wet when I put it up there. I heat it up just to the point where the water evaporates. Heat it a little bit more. There are times when you can use glues and other things for dopping. This is not one of them. This is one of the times that wax really does a great job, because you can alter it just ever so slightly as you go. Now I'm not looking at the bottom of the stone like I was before. Now I'm looking at the color bar and making sure when it spins, it is dead flat. For me, when it spins, there's no wobbling whatever. I can tell that I haven't cut the top perfectly flat. This is a little bit thick there, but I'll start my cut there at that thick part so that I know that I'll get to the bar in the right amount of time. If you're used to working on a machine, you're gonna want to roll that edge over, because that's what we do on machines like this. You need to not do that when you're doing this. Try your very best to keep it nice and flat. Don't roll that edge over. You want the surface to be as flat as you can. You've probably almost cut through half of that, maybe 0.3 by now. When you're on your 600 wheel, this is the point you got to do any last corrections. If you see one bit that's a little bit thicker than the rest, a little bit right there, this is where you just kiss it a little bit more pressure there. Don't press hard, just slightly more pressure. Cut these bars, it's all about finesse. It's all about really light touch, small adjustments. By the time I'm at the end of that 600 wheel, I want to be right on top of that bar, because the other two wheels don't take much. As I go here, I'm both checking if I can see any color from the face, but more importantly, I'm checking the side, just making sure that that line, potch line above the bar, is absolutely even. It's a little thick here, so I'm going to put a little pressure here. Just a little bit, just finesse. Ooh, we can just start to see the color bar poke through. Just barely. Alright, so I'm almost on top of that bar now. It's probably 0.1, 0.2 there. Now this is the part you want to go real nice and slow. This is the part where it usually all turns out and works out for you. It all goes pear-shaped. This 1500 wheel takes material off really slowly. And the middle of the wheel takes off material slower than the rest of the wheel. So see the bar poking through here. So this is really important. If you start to see the bar poking through on one corner, stay away from that corner. You want the rest of the stone to catch up to it. Okay, so this is a really important point. You want to be overly cautious when you're doing this. You can always go back to a rougher wheel and cut a little bit faster, but if you cut too fast, then then your scratches are going to be too deep to finish the polish before the bar ends, right? And so I've decided at this point that I could stay on this wheel. I could stay on this wheel, and it might take me 20 minutes or something like that on this wheel to get to the point where I want. But there's still maybe 0.1 millimeter of potch above the color bar before I get there, right? And so I've got to take that 0.1 millimeter off. I can start to see the color bar peeking through here, doesn't look just like potch anymore. Looks like a little bit of color there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back to my 600 wheel, but I'm going to avoid this corner. See, I can start to see that. I think it might be because I rolled that corner down just a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to take it back to my 600 wheel. I'm going to lick it just a little bit, and it makes it such that instead of 20 minutes, you know, I can finish on this wheel in 3 or 4 minutes is what I'm looking for. If it was a crazy expensive like Harlequin or something like that, I would just stay on the 15. The wheel only cost me $200, and if it's for a $20,000 opal, sacrifice the wheel, not the opal. So I'm staying away from that corner. As I see that color come through, I want to stay away from the color. I want to go grind where the potch is, not where the color is. Now that I can see that color, I know that I'm on the top of the bar. I switch back to my 1300. I'm having a hard time seeing the profile, so I'm going to go back and polish the side so I can see the profile better. I'm afraid that's about all I'm going to get out of this stone. So there's your finished stone. This one turned out that it gives a really nice red, but it is quite directional. But I mean, you can't prevent that. You just got to go in there, and the stone's going to give you what it's going to give you. But I mean, this is a stone that nobody would have even had a shot at. Nobody would have, you know, even tried to cut that. They would have put it in the too hard basket or put it in a jar for some other time and never gotten there. I hope this made sense to you guys. I tried my best. This is something I've never really shared with anybody, and I've never seen anybody try to teach this, so I didn't really have a template to go off of. I just tried to teach you as best I can the way that I do it. You know, and as if you're cutting opals all day, every day, 30, 60, 90 opals every day, you get a feel for this, and you know, you don't have to go through all the measuring and everything, but if you're not doing it every day and you don't know your numbers cold, well then I highly suggest get yourself some calipers and measure and take your time, and if you do it, you can take those impossible stones and you can turn them into, you know, amazing gems that can help you down your opal path. Thanks for watching.